Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Co-Chair Bob Phillips.
Present.
Stephen Ochenbaum here. Representative Corvacey.
Here.
Representative Diaz.
Here.
Representative Kazarian.
Excused.
Representative Newberry.
Here.
Representative Place.
Present.
Senator Dela Cruz.
Here.
Senator Felag. Senator Quesada. Senator Rogers.
Here.
Senator Sasnowski. House Public Appointee Antonio Lopes.
Here.
House Public Appointee Caprice Ranshaw. House Public Appointee Stephen Ucci. Senate Public Appointee Maria Bucci.
Here.
Senator Metz.
Present.
And Senate Public Appointee Alvin Reyes. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next point of order is going to be overview of the redistricting process, and then he's going to go into furthermore. Ryan, I'm going to have the floor to you. We all want to get home to watch the Red Sox game, so hopefully we won't be too late.
I can go quick, I swear. I have actually already prepared for that. Okay. This is probably about our 7th meeting with the Redistricting Commission, and a lot of you have heard the same things over and over again. I am pretty impressed with the turnout tonight, very happy to see everybody here. I'm going to talk less about what we've had an overview, but we are preparing a kind of a progress report for everything that we've talked about with the 7 meetings up to today, and we will be putting that on the website for people to kind of catch up if this is the very first exposure they've had to our project here. So later I will show the link for the website, and I will say we're producing kind of a progress report that talks a lot about what we've talked about already. And I also like to remind everyone that our hearings have all been tape recorded. If you really want to hear them, they are streamable from the website. We're in the city of Providence today. We talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about the changes around the county, but we have not yet really talked a lot about racial changes as far as what's been happening over the last 10 years. And so I'd like to take that opportunity today to talk more about it. And we even got our plotter today in the office so we could start plotting out in great detail what's been going on. So I will show some slides as to what we've seen, focusing on the city of Providence and the surrounding environs, as well as talk about the online tools that we've made available. And we do have a brand new website to draw districts that I'll talk about. And then we will definitely be open for public testimony. So this is the countywide map that I showed back during we had the talk in Woonsocket. It has shown that there has been great population gains in Cumberland, Lincoln, Central Falls, North Providence, and Cranston. It's basically been the most growth that we've had in the state as overall. Now, that was at the tract level. So we have been lucky enough in that there is an online data science group called Social Explorer that is focusing things on even a smaller geographic level, and that is the census block group. And so bringing in this data that they've calculated, because, you know, census blocks and tracts from 10 years ago are not the same as today. So to do an apples to apples comparison does involve merging, and they have taken all the time to do that. So we definitely appreciate Social Explorer for doing this work for us to analyze what's going on at an even more local level. This is percentage population change by block group. The dark green blocks show over 25% growth, and I think a lot of those can be seen where they have put up new loft conversions. I believe every time they put up one of those, it brings hundreds of people into each district, which has caused us to grow. And might mean some of the districts, especially in Providence, they need to shrink in growth because they've grown so much because of these large new developments. Dark red block groups show 25% decline. Not nearly as much as those, only around the port. I would be interested in seeing what factors went into that, as well as a little bit in downtown. We've seen some, or the jewelry district, we've seen some declines in population. We'll be exploring all of these as we work on redistricting plans. But generally, there's been growth in many areas of the region.
Ryan, if I can hold you for a minute. There's a woman that had her hand raised in the back, and I don't know what she's looking. Ma'am? Yes. Okay. Well, the gentleman that's speaking is sitting in front of us without a mask on.
Yes, please come closer.
Emery, can we turn the audio up for Ryan just a little bit? And then if you
Or
come
no,
closer,
if she
ma'am, that
come-
should
Yeah,
fix
she
it.
can come a little bit closer so it's easier for her to hear. And anybody else that needs to come closer, we don't have to be in the back rows. We don't bite, so. Okay. Is there anyone else that needs to move forward so they can either see the screen better or hear better? Please come on down front. Okay. Believe everybody should be all set. Ryan, thank you for your indulgence.
Of course, I didn't want to yell into the microphone. This is kind of like my comfortable talking voice. So if everyone can hear me, that's perfect. I hope, like the previous slide, has kind of made clear that all the population growth that we've had in the city and its environs does mean a lot of these districts are going to be shrinking in area to go down to the ideal population for both House and Senate districts. That's kind of a concept that we've seen all over the state. It's districts down south and in the East Bay are going to have to grow in area, and districts in this Providence and environment are going to have to shrink. Not everyone, but most. But we've taken advantage of this Social Explorers group to look closely at how the racial populations in the city and suburbs have changed. We saw growth overall, but it was not with non-Hispanic whites. If you see anywhere where it's yellow, orange, or red, that's where the percentage points have fallen. And that means whites are not nearly as much as the population as they were 10 years ago. If you see a red, anywhere where a block group is red, they're more than 25 percentage points down. So, for example, if they were 40% of the block group 10 years ago, now they're less than 15%. That's what this map means. Providence and its environs is growing more diverse almost everywhere. There's small pockets of growth with the non-Hispanic white populations in neighborhoods like Mount Hope, the West End, and Upper South Providence. And also, from this map, we can see that like East Providence, for example, is seeing less diversification than other cities. The non-Hispanic black population, as I talked about in Woonsocket, has kind of stagnated. It was 7.2% of the county 10 years ago. It's the same percentage today. And their populations are declining in neighborhoods like Mount Hope, South Providence, and Elmwood. And also, we declining in the multiracial western half of Pawtucket. That I'm curious to know whether they're still living there but answering the census differently, or whether they have moved away from Pawtucket. I would be curious to explore this more as we start looking closer at the city. This is countywide. This is a map that shows where they are living at the census tract level. There are some census tracts where they're over 25% of the population, but none over 30. And those would be in South Providence, Wanscook, and Pawtucket. Most of the growth by far has been with the Hispanic population. Almost every block group in the city and around has seen a larger share of population of Hispanics. They are the largest demographic group in Providence at 44% of the city, and Central Falls at 2/3 of the city. They also have large populations in Pawtucket and Woonsocket. Everywhere there's been slight declines in population around Federal Hill and on the east side of Providence, but vast increases in Cranston and South Providence as well. And this is a map of their percentage population by tract in the county, and we can see a large number of tracts where they are over 50% of the population. His Asians and multiracial groups have also increased in size in many places. Asians typically in South Providence, but strikingly, multiracial populations have grown everywhere, mostly in the western half of Pawtucket, which is basically making the city look very interesting. And I will show a map here pretty soon that kind of shows a striking level about how there's not one racial group in many of the block groups that is a majority in that city. This is the Asian population per block group in the county. A large numbers in Cranston and around Bryant University and east side of Providence and downtown as well. The multiracial population, as I mentioned earlier, has really picked up in many places as focusing on Pawtucket. This is a map that the first one we ever used our plotter on. It is a map that shows by census block, which is the smallest level of geography, what is the majority racial population living in that block. If it's yellow, over 50% is white. If it's purple, over 50% is Hispanic. And there are small pockets of majority with African Americans as well as Asians. But you can see how this southern and western Providence, as you probably expect, was 10 years ago and is still very Hispanic, as well as the Wanscook neighborhood and the entirety of Central Falls. But the fact that you can't see any solid colors in the western part of Pawtucket means nobody is the majority in those census blocks. You might have a group that's 40%, but we color that a little bit differently, so it's not showing to be a majority. And I got an example of this map on this easel here, as well as outside at the sign-in area at the door. Those will be crosshatch. I just wanted to show that some blocks can deceive a little bit. You can see solid colors around brown that shows a majority Hispanic and black next to each other. They are not segregated dorms or anything. Those blocks have like 3 people in them. So it just, if there's 2 of 3 that are a certain race, they're going to show as a solid color. But those are blocks that kind of cover like an athletic area with a couple homes. So they're not great big developments or anything like that. So I just want to make clear that sometimes if you see a solid color in a large, it can kind of deceive you if you don't look closely at where that block is. This is a map that we did to show kind of a combination of population density and diversity. I'm using the same color scheme. The darker the color is, shows a higher population density. We calculated population per acre by 2020 census block. And so that we see very high densification of living in Central Falls, as well as southern and western Providence, and less dense populations in East Providence, North Providence, Lincoln, Cranston, etc. The mixture of colors show a higher diversity. So we can, where North Providence meets Pawtucket, going on into almost the entire city, kind of demonstrates again that there is not an overwhelming majority of any specific demographic group. And this map is also shown on an easel outside at the sign-in area. I apologize to anyone who was here before me. They can go look at it now as on their way out. And these maps will also be available for download on the website. Okay, here's our website again for those who have not yet been acquainted with it. It's www.riredistricting.org. From this website, we are linking to 2 other websites that we would love to have public participation in. We have talked a lot about our community of interest website, And after every hearing, we do have a little bit more participation in it. I'm certainly hoping that everyone here today can grab one of the handouts which is a user guide for how to use it and how to submit what they think is their neighborhood or community of interest. And there's also a user guide that they can download from the website next to the link. And just today, we did link our district drawing website called My Districting. And this is the website where I should say that the community of interest does not require an account. We do require an account to be set up to do district drawing and proposals. The user can choose to load up any of the plans, congressional, state house, or state senate, as well as whether they want to draw from scratch or modify existing districts. And eventually later, we hope to maybe be able to allow city ward options as well. But for right now, they have a choice of congressional, state house, or state senate. We do offer our time to help anybody with the website. Our phone number is 401-222-3876. If anyone calls us to have some training time, we'll be happy to schedule you in at the State House, at the State Library. And we'll show you how to use the website if they want more help. And there is a user guide also for drawing districts with this website next to the sign-in sheet, as well as downloadable off the website. We hope to have all the links and files up before the end of the night. This is the roadshow. You're not only here to listen to me, we're here to listen to the public. I look forward to hearing what they have to say and get their help defining communities of interest. And we're here to, offer our observations on the census numbers and what we're seeing. And we want to hear some views on the redistricting process as well. And with that, I'd like to open up the public testimony or any questions that the commission may have.
Okay, we have a couple of questions from the commission right now, but my first question to you would be the phone number, the 222 number. Is that prominent on the website itself, so people that go to the website will be able to contact you?
We have a link at the very top. There's a link that says contact us.
Okay.
That scrolls right to the number, yes.
Very good. Senator Metz.
Yes, thank you. I know we heard a lot of the information that you've done from place to place, but I see Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris from and some of my neighbors. So if you could go into detail more about the community of interest, and the other thing that would be of interest to the people that live around here is the ACI, how the numbers are counted in Cranston because when they ran the census tracts, the zip codes. When they ran the zip codes, a lot of the people came from 02905, 02907, which is this area. So if you could explain those two things for the people that are some of my neighbors that came, and then the community of interest, and go into a little bit more detail. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before our presenter answer the question, I have a follow-up or complement question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Also, I hope I'm wrong, but maybe some of the public here don't know too well or need to reinforce the information about the census population per district and why brought all of us to here to know that some districts has more or less residents, and that is one of the main purpose. If you have something that show to the public, that way they can start it from that point. Because I have here very well-known State Rep Gislack and other people from the public, members from the community around this building. So I would like to see we can all rise in the same page. So that way the question would be very appropriate. So thank you.
Okay. I'll go with the ACI question first. Kim and I, and with the help of the city of Cranston, looked a lot to put efforts into basically trying to get every building and group quarters building at the ACI into its own block. because as Rhode Island law goes, they are, for the census and for the redistricting, they are counted at the ACI. The ACI does not submit any kind of listing of all of the population there for where they need to be relocated for redistricting purposes. But we did understand that the more that we have, the more blocks that are in the ACI, the more you can strive to not focus all those buildings into one district, which kind of hurts the one person, one vote mantra that we strive for. So if so that would be what we need. Is we need good data for good relocation of the population at the ACI. But we did try, and we have tried to make efforts to maybe not have it affect the one person, one vote principle. Communities of interest are, as we talked about before, I'd like to.
Yeah, just hope.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I can.
Senator Metz.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what people have to understand is some people came from this area, and when they get out, they're going to come back to this area.
Correct. Yes.
But for the redistricting, they're going to be counted from Cranston,
They
and
do.
I don't think people understand
Okay.
that, and how in other states they've addressed it, and if I remember correctly, it may not be addressed this time around here in Rhode Island. So I think people should know that and understand that. That's where I'm going with it. So
That is true. Everything you said is true. Yes. Yes. As community of interest, we'll take all the ideas that everybody has to bring. I look forward, and then our eyes and ears are open for all residents' view of their community and how they can be best served by a solid districting plan. There's, in a city like Providence, you have a lot of different groups, ethnic groups, racial groups, business groups, that the more you know about your community, and the fact that you want these groups to have a political voice means you do take them into account when you do draw districts. You don't try and split them up, or even inadvertently. If we know people's views of their community and where the groups are focused, that definitely helps us out. And so, that's why we offer to help out. If you're a little bit computer savvy, we tried to make this drawing program as easy as we could to increase participation with it. But we are definitely happy to help. If you know of anyone that wants a little hands-on training, we'll be glad to provide it and to talk more about it one-on-one. And your last question was related to, I'm sorry, Rep. Diaz?
To bring the numbers up, to be sure that everybody is on the same page, if you could, it would be great to have the list of the district for, how many, what population is per district, things like that. So people around here, from around 7 districts, have a better idea of where we are in terms to unify the population for each of the districts in the Senate districts.
We have all of that information on the web. I don't have access to web Wi-Fi now, but on the website we've produced all of our research as to how big districts are and what needs to happen to them so that they become more equal and legal. Under Census, we have a State House report that shows a map that does show that the districts, if they're dark pink, they need to shrink in size, and districts that are darker gray need to gain in size. So not one district is at the advantage of another, I should say. If the more population that's in one district, the less of a voice the constituents have in electing that representative or senator. So that's why we are here. If a district is growing immensely with new high-rises and developments, then there's all those new constituents have a less of a voice with who represents them in the state compared to a district that has far fewer people. So that's why we are here to try and redraw everything to the point where things are more equal and better for the community.
Rep. Diaz, I have a question. Do you want him to explain, like, the Senate district will have like 28,878?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I think
And-
that's what
and-
she's,
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's
Yeah.
what she
Okay,
had,
specific
plus or
numbers.
minus the 5% or whatever,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
the House, we have the
And,
same.
Mr. Chairman, also, to be clear that people know in Rhode Island that the congressional seat is safe. We are still counting with 2 congressional seats.
Of course, yes.
It's because of the population in Rhode Island increase, and based on that, we're trying to make it equal every Senate district and state district. Thank you.
Yeah. The Rhode Island population growth of Providence County basically saved the second Senate seat for Rhode Island in Congress. And from past, all the legal arguments that would go into how big say, congressional districts can be and be legal, it really has come down to many states strive to draw exactly the same number of people per congressional district. We do that also in Rhode Island. We draw the 2 districts to be the exact same. We keep towns whole everywhere except for Providence, which are represented by both Congress representatives. That is a 1-person deviation. State House and State Senate, all the legal findings have shown that they don't have to be that exact. We do want to bring in principles like keeping neighborhoods whole, keeping towns whole everywhere possible, following community of interest everywhere possible. And that gets harder the more specific you need to make the size. So we do have a window, 5% below, 5% under is a legal requirement for the state legislature districts. And with Senate, with 75 or 38, we draw those to about 28,000, and with the 75 House districts, we draw those to be about 14,500. You know, these are pretty small, on the small side nationwide, but I appreciate that all the districts really focus on the local needs of the community. And we do our best to stay within the window with all the other principles that we bring. I hope, did that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, are there any more questions from any of the commissioners? Looking down, up and down.
Do you, you had before, when we went to the other presentations, you had the 1 million, whatever it was, for the population of Rhode Island. Do you have that slide?
I might, yes. Let me, I think so.
Have you-
Yeah.
We need the same visuals over here that we had
Okay.
every place else, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
All right.
Okay.
If Brian, if you could bring those up. In the
Of course.
meantime, we might have another question. I see that our Senate appointee, Mr. Reyes, is present, so.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity. I had a question regarding the redistricting, just to make it a little simpler for the community as well, since I'm a public appointee as well. Concerning the redistricting, would that affect the resources that get attributed to some of these communities if for some reason we have to balance certain areas where we might have more numbers and less numbers in certain communities?
A lot of that is determined by the actual population size of the district, of the town or the community. I mean, it is, and of course, every rep is going to strive to try and maximize the resources for their communities, and in that way, that we try hard not to split them up. But on the one hand, that's why there was so much effort put into the census in many areas. Was the more people, the more share of the resources. And so that was, we definitely appreciated all the efforts that went into a robust census participation. And now our job is to try not to split up those communities unnecessarily, to try and so they can maintain their political voice as best they can. And part of that is, of course, community resources. Yeah. I'm trying to bring up a prior presentation. Okay.
Any more questions from commissioners while he's trying to bring up the slides from the previous meetings? I don't see any. So once he brings up the slides, we're going to open it up to public testimony. And I will apologize right off the bat because I'm trying to read some of the names and I am going to butcher a few. So I'll apologize to the participants ahead of time if I do mispronounce your name. Ryan, do you want to explain them?
Of course, this is the slide that was, I believe, mentioned. Rhode Island's 2020 population from the census was 1,097,379. We determined the perfect population for each district by dividing that total by the number of districts for the body. The 2 congressional districts equals 548,690. And then for the Senate districts, 28,800 plus or minus 1,400 people. And the 75 state house districts is about 14,630 plus or minus 730, which in some parts of Providence is about 5 blocks, in size. So sometimes we have a lot of wiggle room, sometimes we don't. But this is the numbers that we're working with from the census.
Anything you need to add, Ryan, or are you all set right now?
I think I'm all set if you're if you're content.
All right, then we will open it up to public testimony, and we have some people that signed up for that they supplied written testimony. I don't know if they also want to speak, so I'm going to try to call the names and just tell me if you want to speak or don't want to speak, and so we can give everybody equal time. I also want to acknowledge that we have Representative Kirzlak in the audience here, and former Representative Almeida is in the audience here too. Oh, and Senator Baptista, I'm sorry. Oh, Representative Baptista. Jose, I can't see you behind the mask. As well as you can't see me most of the time, so. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Grant. All right, and Grant just said if anybody that says they're going to supply written testimony, you may hand it to Grant over in the corner here, if you haven't already, so that we can post it on the website and everything while we're putting things up. The first one I'm going to call on looks like either CE or GE Waxamulski. It says written testimony, but I don't know if you want to speak. Yes, do you want to speak? I'm sorry? You have verbal testimony too? Okay, so if you want to come up, right here at the podium. So when you come down, just please state your name, and if you're affiliated with any organization, or if you're speaking on behalf of just yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gregory Waxmulski. I'm a private citizen. I live in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I'm represented by some very wonderful people. I have to say to all of you who serve in the State House of Representatives or the State Senate, thank you so much. You do a heck of a job. Former representatives, former senators are here. We also have public appointees. Y'all have a very important job to do, and thank you for calling us all out here. This is going to take a lot of tooling around. This isn't going to be something that's just going to be a one and done. We're talking about 10 years. Thank you so much. Brian, thanks Kim for putting together these resources. It's people like me, it's our job to go out there and get these tools into the hands of constituents and the members of the public who are going to help us get this right. We have a really important role to play out here to help you all do your job in there. But look around. We're watching. It's going to be very expensive if we don't get this right easily. So I want to invite everybody who is listening to this or in the room, if you all want to go down to the state library and learn this. I'm a librarian. I'm looking forward to getting hands-on. There are a number of redistricting and drawing tools out there. Princeton Gerrymandering Project, as well as the Union of Concerned Scientists, have lots and lots of tools that we're all prepared to disseminate, to instruct you on, and to deploy as we go forward. So come on out. Let's get involved. Let's get out there. Let's find those communities. Let's make sure, because I'll be honest with you, nobody's going to take anybody to court for a head count. But there are all kinds of things that we can do together to make sure that we've got great representation for the next 10 years. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Next one we have up for verbal testimony is Nick Lima from the city of Cranston. Mr. Lima?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Commission. Nick Lima, I'm the Director of Elections and Registrar for the City of Cranston, the Redistricting Coordinator for the Cranston Redistricting Commission. Real quickly, I just want to inform the Commission this evening of a couple of quick points. So the City of Cranston has been engaged in its own local redistricting process over the course of the summer and now into the fall. And we started back in June and July and into August with a neighborhood process to solicit public input. We had some public hearings to define or better define the neighborhoods in the city to aid us in the redistricting process as we head into the winter and into next spring. And that process bore fruit. We actually had some great public meetings and a lot of good comment and feedback. We were able to basically produce a neighborhood city map. And from that, we were able to take it one step forward and actually basically have a draft for redistricting exercise that we conducted over the last several weeks. We conducted we're calling it scenario A1, which is drawn in a vacuum. We don't know what the state lines are yet. We can't complete that process or really even undertake it until after the state's process is complete over the course of this winter. But in order to give us basically a head start, we did look at that exercise and to see how that process would work and what kind of ward map we could come up with and for the 6 wards in the city. So that process is all publicly available on the City of Cranston website, cranstonri.gov. I encourage members of the Cranston community or the state at large to take a look at the resources we have available there. And in addition, we've had some public hearings on that, and I've gotten some very good positive feedback on that draft so far. And we're going to continue to have public comment and feedback on that process over the course of the next several months, while we wait for the state to complete its process, and then, of course, we can then complete it at the municipal level thereafter. The other point I really wanted to just real quickly address is what the local boards of canvassers will be doing of the 39 cities and towns when this process starts to conclude in the spring. Once the maps are finalized, once the state districts and local districts are known, the boards of canvassers will have to conduct a precincting process to figure out where polling places are, to figure out what the precincts are, which, as I've mentioned in previous testimony, is a process that's defined in part by state law. One important aspect of that process that the Commission doesn't really tangle with too much, but I think you should at least be aware of the process and how it works, is the street ranges. So street ranges are essentially the nuts and bolts of the election system and the voter registration system in the state. If you live on Main Street between addresses of 1 and 50, your polling place is the high school and your district is voting district 1. But if you live between 51 and 100 Main Street, your polling place may be the middle school and you may be in district 2. That's the basic concept of the street ranges. And it gets more complex to that. We have addresses on the wrong side of the road and things of that nature. So as we proceed with this process here over the next several weeks and months, the cities and towns in particular will be looking at our street ranges and cleaning them up, making sure they're ready to go for that process when we convert the new district maps into a new set of street ranges that will be used for the next 10 years. And I wanted to mention this because Kim Brace has actually mentioned it now several times in his testimony of some of the work that we've already undertaken to clean up those street ranges in Cranston and in our neighboring communities. In particular, I want to thank the Board of Elections, the Secretary of State's office and their staff, as well as very much so the City of Providence Board of Canvassers, because they've worked hand in hand with us pretty much since 2017 on a multi-year project to improve our street ranges, to eliminate overlap, to make sure that voters, when they register to vote, are registered in the right place. I'll give you an example. There might have been a street on the Providence-Cranston boundary a few years ago where the street ranges overlap. So Providence had a valid range of between 1 and 50, but Cranston may have had a valid range between 40 and 100. So between that 40 and 50, you have an overlap. You have a potential for voters to be assigned to the wrong city, which means they'd be showing up at the wrong polling place on election day, and they could be disenfranchised. We were able to identify dozens of street ranges that had that sort of scenario and get them cleaned up before the 2018 elections. And that's a process that we continue to do and evaluate as we go forward. So it's a very much behind the scenes effort, but it's something that we do at the municipal level, and I just want to make sure the commission is aware of that. It's important because at the end of the day, it's how every single one of Rhode Island's almost 800,000 registered voters are assigned on the voter rolls. Everyone has to fall within that valid street range. And those ranges are not only controlled by what the district lines end up being, but by that precincting process the boards of canvassers will undertake in the spring. That's all I have for testimony this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lima? Seeing
Thank you.
none. Thank you. Yes, Ryan.
I just wanted to reiterate that everything Mr. Lima says is very, very correct, very true. And Kim and I have had a lot of experience here with many of the towns trying to bring the best precincts that we can into proposal. All these concepts will definitely be on our minds as we try and present you the best district plans that we can for State House and State Senate.
Thank you. Okay, our next person up looks like former Rep. Joe Almeida. I don't know any time when Joe didn't give people hell.
Hi, everybody. It's kind of interesting. I look at all of you all, and I see 10 years have gone by. Well, 10 years ago, I'm so glad to see Harold and Grace sitting side by side, because 10 years ago, I sat where you all were, and now I'm over here. Ooh, boys, this is interesting. I look at all of you, and I know you guys got a lot of decisions to make and some very important stuff. But there were some great things that happened 10 years ago. First of all, before I go any further, is Kimball Race here?
He is at home. He was not able to make it this week.
Ah, he's a good man. I wish I could have.
I'll let you know when he's in town again.
Would you let him know? Joe Almeida was asking for him, okay?
We'll be in touch, for sure.
Thank you. 10 years ago, it was a real big civil rights agenda, and it was done by my good brother Harold Metz. And when we sued and the state of Rhode Island buckled, they buckled because of the fact that when we drew the map, we included the Mount Hope area. And when we redid the lines, we made sure that my good sister Grace was well represented. You all have that opportunity to do that again. 1994, I never thought I'd be talking about history, because anybody who really knows me, I like to talk about today and tomorrow. And I got to go in the past to talk about today and tomorrow. But 94, Kevin Jackson, he was a city councilman in the Mount Hope area. And the lines were drawn in such a way that Kevin could not represent Chad Brown, which included black and Latinos. So that weakened the minority vote. Sir, with all great respect to you and Mr. Kimball, I have great respect for him. But Harold brought up an issue that y'all need to take a good look at, because we've been looking at it for 10 years. And that's the ACI. Are you kidding me? At the ACI, let's take 02905. Those guys and those men and women that are sitting up there, okay, fine. But the fact is the city of Cranston is making money off of them, and yet those people are coming back home. Those people are registered to live in 02905. Not Cranston. What, are we going to water it down again like we did to poor Kevin Jackson? To take the minority vote and just wipe it out? And the magazine that comes on, oh jeez, that comes in your email, you get in your website and all that. You can see I'm not a tech guy. I'm just good enough, lucky enough to turn a computer on. But when you look at the root, when you look at the GRIO, G-R-I-O, it is sponsored and delivered with good intentions by black journalists. And in that, both those, as you read, we just did a breakdown that with great respect to you, sir, because you're just doing your job, man. I hate to put you on the hot seat, but that's what Joe Almeida does. But the fact is that you talk about, counting, people being counted in the Census Bureau. Well, the Census Bureau 10 years ago wasn't good for black and brown people. Pay attention. It was not good, and it still isn't good. You mentioned black, brown, yellow, but there's one color you missed, my brother, and I'm not Native American. You missed red. And if that's not true, if you go over here on Broad Street, go this way, we have the Rhode Island Indian Council, which is the national office of Indian councils in the country. I believe there's 4 more. Oh, I'm going to get this wrong, but I know there's Boston, New York, Connecticut, and then the rest are out west. But in fact, when you start talking about people of color, then you need to include red people, and they never are, and they're not included in the ACI. So I ask that all of you give your, and you do, I know you're going to give your due diligence, because I have full faith in all of y'all. But you need to look at these numbers, because I hate the Census Bureau, and everybody knows it. Because it takes black people and brown people and starts separating us. What you gonna do when a black man marries a Latino? What color is that child? You all cannot forget that. The Census Bureau cannot forget that. And that is not being written up the way it should be. All I know is that when I get in my car, I see a lot of black and brown people all over the place. In fact, I see them all day. So the most of white people I see is probably when I come up in here. Because the community I serve is black and brown. The community I work in is black and brown. I have my own business, I work with them. I'm proud of that fact. You all know, well, some of you don't know because you weren't up there when I was there. But the fact is, look, a portion of you all know that for years I talked about minority contractors. Well, we don't want to go there because we're going to have another heart attack, ain't we? So, I leave you with this. Remember what happened to Kevin Jackson. They took away his minority vote. A white man. They took away the minority vote from this good man, and they gave it to the rich East-Siders. Grace, Harold, we fought for y'all. You know how we fought. You know how I spoke up. And that has to be continued today. Our people need to be represented by the numbers of who we are and what we are, and not what the census thinks we are. So, with that, I'm getting that eyeball from Doc. So with that, I ask, if you have any questions, I'm here to take them all. Yes, ma'am.
On the new 2020 census, there's now a category for mixed race. In my personal opinion, that technically takes away from Black, brown, Hispanic communities because today we're all so mixed. So on the map, we do have some populations that are identified as mixed race, but it doesn't say what race. So I'm just saying, in my opinion, I think that dilutes Black, brown, Hispanic, Asian communities because no one really is identified. So who are you representing?
Who are you? I can't see without my glasses.
I'm Caprice.
You're Caprice?
Yes.
Oh, nice to meet you. I heard a lot about you, but I'm so glad to hear.
I hope good things.
Oh, yeah. If they weren't trust me, my sister, you'd know I'd say it anyway. But yeah, they were all great things, not good things. I agree with you. And in fact, as this good gentleman has done and described the black and the brown and the yellow. He did not mention what you just said. So that in itself concerns me.
Which is true today because we want to over-identify, I think, today, right? We want everyone to be able to be mixed in whatever they can be whoever they want to be, but for the census, I think in the end, it really just hurts the minority vote, but that's just my opinion.
And it's a great opinion, but I'm still a Buffalo soldier no matter what. But the fact remains, the fact remains that mixed pot is what's bothering me. But 10 years ago, when they talked about it, they tried to do this. I'm glad you're sitting up there and you're bringing it to the attention of all these good people, so thank you.
Ryan has a response, I think, but one of the categories is multiracial. So that could be the one that puts everybody in or more than one race. So Ryan, why don't you do it, and then we'll have Grace.
Thank you for bringing that up, Caprice. You made a very good point. Everything I did show today was alone, non-Hispanic alone, not black, Hispanic black alone, Hispanic multi. There is a subsequent report that we always do whenever we produce any information about a proposal or a plan, and we've done it for the report that we've done for you already. And that is, anytime that you see a population group with an _C, that means it's the racial group in combination with all that I have identified as entirely or partially a part of that racial group. And that basically what that does is it takes, let's say there's like 1,000 persons that identify as multi. All those 1,000 numbers do go into the both of the races that they identify as, white and Asian, black and native. And whenever we produce a plan or a proposal or are looking for more on data, we take that into account. And we will be looking at the combination of the races to make sure that we're not doing what you're concerned about. But thank you definitely for bringing it up.
How many people of color you got working for you?
We're a 2-person operation here.
That's two less on my end of the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rep Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, my good friend Joe, you always get the whole attention. And your point you raised tonight is so important and validate. But I just want to add it to at the time of the census, people identify themselves of many ethnicity, which made the census information so complicated. And I remember one night when Mr. Cambridge was referring to one person has more than 8, identify themselves with more than 8 ethnic group.
6 is the...
Six.
Max, yeah.
So your point is so validated because we have to figure it out what a specific ethnic group we can categorize those individuals, because the census lists many of them that classify themselves with more than one ethnic group. So it's a headache for us, but we'll get to the point that you're referring to. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Grace.
Okay, any other questions? Joe, my friend, you have a good night. Thank you for coming and testifying. in
I
front
ain't
of us.
going nowhere till I say hello and get up close. Say hello.
Well, I know you're going to sit
Caprice.
back down, but you can
No, I'm
stay
going to
all
say
you
hello to
want.
Caprice over there.
Okay.
I've heard about it.
All right, now I'll call up the next one while you're schmoozing again. Okay, the next one that's signed up is, and I'm hoping it's Jose, it looks like Vieira or Vega.
Batista,
Jose?
is that the grant?
Okay, if it's not seeing, if there's anybody that signed up afterwards, after we go through the list that I didn't call, and they said I missed your name, I might be not looking at the signature correctly. So I'll move on to the next one. I'll leave this one open. for that person to talk a little later if they need to. Next one is Andrew Poyant. Again, if you can come down, state your name, and if you're affiliated with any group or you're just speaking for yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Andrew Poyant. I'm speaking for myself. I'm a Providence resident. I live in Elmhurst, one of the many communities of Providence. One of the things I would like to see is in Elmhurst, we have been divided in such a way that we have 3 state senators, 3 state rep districts, and 3 city council districts. We should be trying to keep our communities in one district and not have it split up in order to, as it was in the past. So I think that should be something that should be considered in this, is trying to make sure that our communities are whole in the district. Additionally, I think it was kind of brushed off too quickly about prison gerrymandering. We definitely have the data of where people live, where people were living prior to being placed into ACI. So, I think given that this is going to affect the districts over the next 10 years, we should take the time to make sure that they are counted in the district that they resided in prior to going to ACI. And I also wanted to reiterate, to say something. So California, the last 10 years ago, when they were doing redistricting, they were very intentional about making sure the way that it was redistricted in order to make it more competitive for races. Just a minute. To make it more competitive, in the end, they ended up having more women and more people of color be elected, and they so I want to just make sure that we're not doing it in a way to make it less competitive and to redistrict people out that are candidates or currently sitting, and to make it better so that way we can get more women and people of color in office. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, the next one that we have is Lenny, and it looks like C-I-O-E? C-O? Okay. I didn't want to butcher the name, so.
No problem, everybody does. Hi. Thank you for taking the time to do all this, and I know it's a lot of work. But in the state, we definitely have a gerrymandering problem here in Rhode Island. In 1981, the Senate Majority Leader Rocco Quartucci sought to punish Representative Lila Sapinsi and Richard Leach. So Rocco tried to combine 2 districts with disregard for dividing and disenfranchising communities, all for power. The board did exactly as Rocco asked, and that's why they were nicknamed Rocco's Robots. After many court battles, with huge costs to taxpayers, the districts were straightened out. The cost of that battle was $370,000. Today, those very costs to the taxpayers would be $25 million. Shadows of 1981 hang over this process. Senator Dominic Ruggiero and Rep. Sakachi are dipping into Rocco's political playbook, handpicking people to be on this board, to do his bidding and the power grab, and to divide up communities without regard for the people of Rhode Island. And to add insult to injury, we have a professional gerrymanderer, Kimball Price, whose whole profession is to gerrymander districts. At what time in this process are the people and the communities of Rhode Island taken for what they need? To divide up communities just for this grab of power and to make sure that districts keep the people in power in them will do a disservice to this state. So I'm here to ask you, please, think about the people in our communities. Don't divide up communities for power. The lower part of District 4 is divided up already. To divide it up even more would disenfranchise so many people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lenny. Mr. Lopes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for those comments. Honestly, as a public appointee, I just wanted to add this one context. The only thing that you mentioned in there that I would vehemently disagree with is to do his bidding. Respectfully, my mother was one of the first women she was one of the first women of color to be elected to the General Assembly. I stay out of politics mostly. My brother's a lobbyist, full disclosure. But I stay out of Rhode Island politics. I worked in Boston my whole professional life. I own 2 businesses here in Rhode Island. I was asked to do this. I'm honored to do it, but I would never accept, I don't have to accept it, obviously. I would never have accepted it if it was under those conditions, so I just respectfully push back on that one caveat of that sentence, to do his bidding. That's all I say.
If this board was correct, it would be represented by citizens picked by the Attorney General that applied for the job.
Totally respect where you're coming from. I'm just saying, that one sentence,
No,
I would
I
challenge.
respect that you're here doing this, because it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But if this board was to be correctly represented, there would be 2 people from every community, 2 people picked by the Attorney General that applied for the job, and then they pick 2 people so that everybody's represented. And that way we have a nonpartisan board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
I also respect the gentleman's comments regarding that, but I also find it a little bit offensive that you mentioned that, because I am also a citizen and a resident of Providence, a working blue-collar resident, and I have no affiliation to any party here. Nobody persuaded me to be here on this commission. I just want to represent the public as well. I grew up with not having opportunities, so I understand your frustration with many past doings in politics, but these are respected elected officials. The public elected them. You can't judge people based on past actions of other individuals, and judge us too, community residents that are taking time out of our daily lives with our families, with our jobs and professions to serve the public. I'm not an elected official, nor do I, have asked to pursue that. I'm here because I want to represent my community. I want to make sure that their voice is heard as well. And it's offensive that you would say or even comment that we are here based on certain individuals' gain of power. That's not why we're here. This is not 1981, sir. It's 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to call point of order. I mean, if Mr. Ciolo wants to talk, he'd come back down to the podium, but to stand up and just talk by the audience, that's never been our forum or our decorum.
Okay.
It's all right.
All right. Is there any more comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ciolo. Next one up is Louis Munoz. If I'm correct, Dr. Munoz.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Luis Daniel Munoz, thank you for the time. Aquinin Etop, we're on Narragansett land, so I just want to say peace be to you all. And, you know, really today, what I want to share is an experience I had over the past week, having visited the reservation. And I just want to start on history. History is important. And so let's recognize that communities were racialized to be monetized, right? And it started in the age of the Renaissance, and it was propped up in this country. And so this country was built on the backs of our indigenous, our black and brown communities. And the reason I mention that is, you know, we look at the census data, and so often there's a displacement of accountability here in the state of Rhode Island as to what we recognize to be unique cultures. Cape Verdeans, which I mentioned around Pawtucket, right? They categorize themselves as biracial, multiracial. Our indigenous population, which we have members of the Narragansett tribe who do the same. So one of the elders invited me to the reservation last week, and it was a privilege to be there with her. And we met at the protest for the Blackstone statue and wanting to bring it down. And when I go on the reservation, the elder Belanoka says that no one has visited. No one has visited. Elected governors, no one has visited the reservation. And what I found on the reservation is that for 2,000 tribal youth members that don't live on the reservation but are scattered in Pawtucket, Providence, the tribe gets $4,000 from the state a year. She walks me over to low-income housing that was built for elders. They had federal dollars, housing dollars to spend, and the town of Charlestown cuts permits for gas lines. Early 2000s. By 2009, after a court trial, there was no more money to spend. Permits were never gathered. The housing stood there. 10 years later, walked through those houses, vandalized by members that weren't of the tribe, but it's on tribal land, so everybody forgets. Representation matters, and today, the ocean front is being restricted for the tribe. Our indigenous people need the ocean. It is part of their rituals and traditions, and the town of Charlestown is putting gates up. Now, they don't live on the reservation. We have tribal members in Providence and Pawtucket. Representation matters. But does it fit into this model, this census tracts, this density of population? No, it doesn't. In the words of our indigenous community, Numinake se num, you have power. You all have power. But for the marginalized, Kuminake se num, we have power together. Please don't forget the marginalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, next one says written testimony only, but I'm going to ask if this person would like to speak. Is Eloise Wyatt? Do you want to speak? No. Okay. Thank you. Next one is Elaine. No. Okay. So we'll go on to Susan Feely. Welcome, Susan.
I just wanted to repeat what's already been said several times, that I think the issue of making redistricting fair for people who are in the ACI is really, really important. It's important for the many people who are in the ACI, and it's also important for the communities where they live. I live in a community that is probably affected by this, and the fairness to those people in the ACI is enough reason to put a great deal of effort into getting this right. Other states have done it. It's not impossible. It's not even that hard. I realize the data might not be there yet, but I think there's enough power up here to make sure that data can be collected. Certainly the court system knows where these people come from, and I think if there's a real interest in doing it, it can happen. So I hope that that will happen, because I think it's extremely important that that ACI issue get fixed, and I hope it gets fixed without the very expensive court system response afterwards, because people are upset about an unfair result. So I hope that that doesn't happen. I hope this process can lead to a really fair system, and that I think fixing the issue about the ACI is really important to making that happen. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next one I have up here is Damien Leo Lima. Damien?
Good night. My name is Damien. I like the sound Damien. Thank you very much. What else do I need to say?
Just if you're speaking for yourself, or are you associated with some organization?
Oh, I am speaking for myself.
That's fine. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. I'm a resident of this city. And I have a few questions. So one of my first question is, after the maps are drawn for, I guess, the first time, will there be opportunities to provide feedback? So right now we're sending some feedback preemptively, but once they're done, before they're final, will there be a chance for the community to provide any type of feedback? The next one is, are there any procedures created or in place to try to separate political pressures from the process? What kind of things are in place, I guess, to try to not only the fact that there won't be any pressure, but also make sure that it doesn't look like it, because it is important that that people can see what is happening. And I think my last question is, how many data scientists or political scientists are a part of the committee that will be providing feedback from the committee? And also, I would also want to acknowledge that in this city, as Lenny said, as other people have said, there is a historical trauma that needs to be acknowledged of things that have happened in the past that have affected people negatively, and that it is coming up right now when this process is starting again. And I think it is important to acknowledge that in order to have a process that people will trust, so that people will trust the institutions that are here to serve them. We are looking for kinfolk in this committee, and I hope, we're putting our trust in you. We're looking for kinfolk. So thank you very much.
Okay, so if I have your third question correctly, you said, is there any political scientists?
Or data scientists, somebody who...
Or data scientists?
Who are part of the committee itself.
Okay.
Not from the agency,
Yeah.
because I'm sure.
Ryan, I don't...
Earlier I said we were a two-person operation. That's actually not true. We do contract with a lot of people bring their specialties to the project. They would be partnering with us, but we do have a very nationally renowned political scientist who studies racial bloc voting analysis, and she is part of our team that will be here to address her specialty, which is cohesion voting and racial bloc voting, to try and make sure that we're not packing or splitting communities. But I can't say she's not a part of our agency, but right. We're making her analysis available to you to help with your job.
Okay.
I don't think that was not my question. I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't explain it well. The folks who are in the committee.
There is, to my knowledge, there is no political scientist, data scientist on the commission itself. So if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay. The other one was feedback. We do plan on having a second round of meetings if needed after the maps are drawn. If we feel, or if people feel that we need to go out to certain communities again to maybe explain it further. So there will be an opportunity at some point if needed. We're not going to say there's definitely going to be one, because if people are satisfied with what this commission is doing, then there's no need to have a second round and have more time to go out and do the other one. And the last question was about political pressure. I can only speak for myself. I'm an analytical person. The data is the data. It doesn't matter what it is. If the data shows that the lines need to be drawn here, they need to be drawn here. I don't use any type of pressure at all. I'm not a type, and you don't know me. Most of the people here do not know me, but people that know me know I'm a no-nonsense person.
But is there a process, a procedure, certain regulations that are being
We
played?
have federal law we have to abide by. We have the Rhode Island Constitution that we have to abide by. There's a lot of different things that we have to know, especially when it comes to racial inequality. And that's one of the things that we try to take at the heart of everything, is that we make sure that different races have enough people to have their own say, to maybe have elected people of that type of race. Okay, I hope that answers some of your questions.
It does, it does. Thank you very much.
All right.
And then one last comment.
Go ahead.
When we're looking at race and we're looking at identity, you know, we get very caught up on the race question, the identity question. But what we're doing is that we're using those as proxies for oppression. We're using those as proxies for racism, proxies for, you know, the not really giving opportunity for low-income folks. So, you know, we're thinking about the different parts of the census, but what we're really trying to do is respond to these other things that have, you know, taken political power away historically from communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Damien.
I am not on the list, but I have a follow-up question to something that's
We,
there.
we can add you to the list at the end if you'd like, because we have the list of people that have already signed up. So I would be more than happy to have you speak.
Catherine Saunders had me for the list.
Catherine with a C or a K, please?
With a C, thank you.
Okay, so next one I have, it looks like the last name is Sanchez. If that's correct, I'm trying to. Okay, and the first name, I don't want to even attempt to, so.
It's Enrique.
Enrique, okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Enrique Sanchez, Political Director of the BLM PAC, a member of Prov DSA, Reclaim, and supporter of the co-op, the Rhode Island Political Co-op. I am here as an educator at Central High School next door. Every day I see in our black and brown students the consequences of the policies that most of you support and push for at the State House. Tonight, you're having this redistricting committee meeting without a majority working class community from this neighborhood. Folks that live in areas like Manton, on Academy, Chalkstone, Southside, I do not see them here in this crowd here. I see a bunch of folks who are in political office, folks who are in the political world, who follow politics, who follow community activism, but I do not see ordinary working class people hearing these hearings and decision makings in this meeting tonight. Gerrymandering is clearly happening and without public opinion from the general public, and it is being represented in this community tonight. I call that there be more transparency and dialogue from our general public into these decision makings. Gerrymandering is happening because marginalized people and people of color are being kept out of political office and are being affected when there is power and support from the establishment within the State House to keep low-income people and marginalized people from running from office. I also don't think ex-senators should serve on this redistricting committee. Ex-Senator Harold Metz is a clear example of Senator Dominic Ruggiero's bidding to be on this committee. So to Lenny Seal's point, that is an example of bidding. Also, I think that everyone in this room should be wearing a mask. Unfortunately, hundreds of people have been killed from COVID from around these neighborhoods. People have been infected with COVID-19, and I think that everyone should follow those guidelines when it comes to being in our most vulnerable community here in Providence. We have had many people die from COVID from these zip codes, and I ask that we follow those guidelines here in this room. Thank you.
Senator Metz?
Yeah, if I can, my family's lived in this neighborhood since 1962.
Okay, yep.
I'm a Central High School graduate. I was a teacher and coach at Central High School and a school administrator. Still live in South Providence.
Okay.
My wife's also a teacher, and they asked us why we stayed in this neighborhood, because people asked me to run for office. I'm not anybody's lackey. And I want you to understand.
But you also push for, in your history as being a senator, for racist,
let me-
for anti-LGBT plus policy bills,
let me
and
finish.
that's why you were
let him
replaced.
Let me finish my
Okay,
statement.
I'm responding. Okay.
Let me finish my
Don't
statement.
interrupt him, please.
Let me finish my statement. And I sued the state. That's why I'm on that committee, because they know I'm not afraid of the system. And to conclude with your final remarks is, I'm not ashamed of the Bible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, and that's why you're replaced by someone who actually represents this community.
Mr. Chairman,
Working
point of
class people.
order.
What's your point of order?
I don't
Diaz?
think that is a rhetoric, a public exhibit, and you have the First Amendment to say what you're saying, but
Right.
please respect the job other people do. And on top of that, I just want to say one thing. This man, the Honorable Senator Met, was the one introduced and passed right to vote for minority people in the state of Rhode Island. And just for that, he deserves all respect.
Right.
Thank you.
Incremental policy. Okay, anyways. All right, anything else? Yep,
Excuse me, honey, how old are you?
25.
25. You should respect your elders. I'm 23 years old. Everyone on this board is putting in a lot of work in their time. I find it incredibly disrespectful. You can have your opinions, we can agree to disagree, but I find it completely inappropriate.
I find it appropriate that you're not wearing a mask, ma'am.
Honey, my father died of COVID last year. We're
Right.
not going to get into
I'm sorry for your loss, but you should be wearing a mask. Also,
Enrique, move on, please.
okay, all right. Anything else?
Anything else, Caprice? No. Okay. Any other comments? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Next person to speak would be Peter McClure. I don't see somebody coming down. Is Peter McClure here? Okay, I will go on to Ms. Saunders. Thank you for being willing to speak. You're up now.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad I can see your names way in the back. I can't see who's who. So thank you all so much for your service. This is, as I think some people have really mentioned, such a weighty process and so important. And the process itself is really important. And so one of the questions I had a gentleman before me asked, will there be a chance for the community to give feedback on the maps? And you said, if needed. How will you know if needed? Because how will you get feedback? How will I, as a resident of Providence, how will my neighbors, how will my community members be able to review those and give you feedback and let you know that there needs to be change or not? Could you please speak to that?
Ryan, can you, or do you want me to try to cover it?
I don't want to, I'm under the impression we are doing a second round
Right, but-
around the state with drafts of the maps for public comment. I think maybe there was a confusion as to whether we want to do some more before that, because round one, is set.
Right.
But round two is to be
open
determined.
to be
But
determined.
it will happen.
Right.
Yes.
Usually people will say, there was somebody from Newport County who says, could we have another one in the Newport County? So we've had feedback on that, so we're planning on a second round with Newport County. I assume we're going to have one at least in Providence area for when they distribute the maps and that. And we're hoping to get the feedback on the website to have people that contact the website and says, I'd like to speak, and, can there be a meeting in whichever community it is?
And if you addressed this already at the very beginning, I came a little bit late by the time I could get out of work, but what exactly is the process from here?
Well,
What can I, as a resident, expect?
If you want to come to set up an appointment with Ryan here to come to the State House, to the State Library at the State House there.
Thank you.
You can also see about drawing maps yourself, helping, they will have an area at the library where they're going to set up a computer where you can draw the lines yourself if you'd like to.
But what are you going to do? What do I tell my neighbors? Because they look at me, because they always go, you know about this stuff. What's going to happen? How do I find out about this? What can you give me a little
Chair,
overview?
I was just going to suggest that we put up the website again, because there are a lot of interactive tools on the website, so you can put in
But
feedback.
that's not my question. My question is what's the arc of the
So
process?
we are at the beginning step, so we're going to
Okay.
take all that information that we receive from the website. So I was going to have them put up the website again.
Yeah.
All right. And also Rep. Newberry wants to respond.
No, you asked a good question. I was under the impression we're going to do another round of meetings after the maps come out. The only question is where and how many, because, for example, Providence, I would assume would come back here. We may not go back to Woonsocket. I don't know. But to answer your question about where the process goes from here, I went through this 10 years ago as an elected official, not in a committee, and the job that the consultant has to do, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. They take pieces that don't fit, right? Anybody can draw them pieces. You, as a member of the public, as was just said, you can go and you can submit pieces that you think make sense. But somebody has to draw the statewide map and has to shave the pieces to make it fit. That's the hardest part what Ryan has to do. He's the one that mainly does that. But you can submit proposals to him, and then what he does, he comes out with a couple, at least two, I don't know how many, versions of the statewide maps that fit them together, and that's when people can really see what's happening.
So are those put out for voting, for people to comment on a website in these meetings? And what's
They'll be put out in public, and then people can come back. We'll have some more meetings like these where people can come and comment and questions. And eventually this committee, and changes will be made. I know they will, because I remember from 10 years ago, I think last time there were 3 proposals, and then, one, they got sort of whittled down to 1, and that got shaved and changed, and then the commission votes on it. And then it goes to the legislature starting in January, where it has the same legislative process, goes to committees and so on.
So this is all going to happen in the next 2 months?
Yeah, it'll be finalized, it'll actually be into law, most likely, before the February legislative break, and that has to be because the towns and cities have to take it from there.
So is there a timeline for when these first set of maps that will be drawn for us to review? So as a resident, know when I should be, watching my email, watching for the notices, watching the paper?
Well, they have been open right now to come in. People have been open to come to see Ryan right now to draw the
Correct,
maps.
but I'm asking
Our first round, Grant, is it next week, the last?
Our last meeting for the first round is scheduled for Monday, and then round 2 is not scheduled yet.
Round 2 is not scheduled, right. Once round 1 is over, all the maps, preliminary maps will be drawn and put out there as Rep. Newberry said, for the public and that.
And is there a timeline when
Yes.
those maps will be put out for us to review?
Well, I do want to state that for anybody who wants to know things as they happen and as they get announced, please sign up for the email form on our website. We will be, as we do know that when they have the dates finalized for round 2, we will be announcing them to everybody who signed up for the email list. The timeline is not yet determined. Hopefully it's as soon as next month.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Saunders?
I wish it were a little clearer for the community to understand when to be paying attention, but I understand that you're giving me the information at the best that you can.
Right, and the other thing is, I'm happy that we have this amount of people here, but I wish there were more myself, because I think people need to know what's going on. And
Yeah, I think,
Mr. Chairman, a point of
Yeah,
order. We
it's
just
been
can't have
posted.
people randomly shouting out, please.
yeah. But I guess I will echo
Right.
that I'm fortunate that I'm on the Common Cause email list,
Yeah.
and that's how I found out about it. It was fortunate, that I wish the whole state were on Common Cause's email list, but they aren't, and this is the only place I heard about this particular meeting. So, so I think there could be a better job to get it out on social media and radio announcements, public announcements. Yeah.
We can take that into consideration too for.
Yeah, because we
next time.
we care about our communities, and we know you do too, but we want to be heard. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And we want to know how to be heard in a respectful, productive way, and not just being upset after the fact. Yeah.
Senator Dela
Thank
Cruz.
you.
I believe the, excuse me, the Senate Twitter page does update the constituents, whoever follows it, when we have these redistricting meetings.
And I believe there's other ones too. I know that the one that was in Woonsocket, I've announced it on both radio stations in the area there. And I know it's been put up on Facebook and that, and a lot of people follow Facebook. I don't know how many follow other things, but we try to do the best. We've tried to be as transparent as possible and tried to get things out there to the public. Just wished myself that there was more that would have come forward. Yes, Mr. Alquist. If you will state your name and the organization, please.
Steve Alquist, I'm with Uprise Rhode Island. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I think it's becoming more and more clear as this goes on that we're sliding into not doing anything about prison gerrymandering, as Senator Metz and other people have suggested. And one of the things that's not happening is that the commission itself, the members, are not having a robust discussion about it. I think what needs to happen, and what I see at other commissions and panels around the state, having been to hundreds of meetings in my life, somebody needs to make a motion, then it needs to be debated and it needs to be voted on to basically tell election day to services that they need to get the stuff, the information from the DOC so that they can make the corrections to the rolls, whatever they are, the census, to allow people to be listed in their original, where they were arrested or where they lived before they were arrested. Or else this is just going to happen is that in 2 weeks or so, we're going to start working on maps with the data as it is, and then it's going to be too late at some point. So, well, we'd like to do it, but it's too late. So I think it needs to be done now. It needs to be done before the next two meetings, because the next two meetings are our last chance to really get the data into shape before this happens. We have Thursday, we have Monday, then we're making maps. Now, when we talk about where we get this data, it's online somewhat. And I know there's better stuff, but there's an inmate search at the Department of Corrections that has every person currently incarcerated in the prison system of Rhode Island, not maybe the Wyatt, but everywhere else. And it lists what city they come from. I know that this DOC probably has the zip codes. I know they have more information that they're not putting on here to respect privacy to a certain extent. But if the information is there on a website and anybody can look it up, it's definitely in the hands of DOC. And it doesn't sound like it would be that much work to get it. And I know it is a lot of work to move it, but it is what we need to happen if we're going to deal with prison gerrymandering in any real way. And I know there is an appetite for it, at least among some members of this commission. And I think there's an appetite for it in Providence for sure. And there's an appetite for it throughout Rhode Island because we don't like this kind of essentially racial gerrymandering, right? So if we don't do that, then we know that the decision is being made without really being made. We're just going to slide into it. And so I would love to see us at least have that discussion among yourselves as a commission. And if we don't do it, at least then we'll know why we're not doing it. It won't just be, oh, couldn't do it, it's over. And that's my opinion, and that's what I'd wanted to say tonight. And I'm open for any questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Alquist? Okay, thank you, Mr. Alquist.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, there's one, two, hold on, we got two right now. So I saw her hand raised first, so if you would please come down, state your name and any organization if you are associated with them or if you're speaking for yourself.
Hello again. My name's Dixie Sampson. I'm here as the People-Powered Fair Maps representative from the League of Women Voters. I'm actually going to ask a couple questions as a citizen, though. I was here when we had our first hearing, and it's good to see you all again. I'm so happy to see all these seats filled. I have a couple questions. So when we had our first open hearings, one of the things that a lot of people were concerned about on our side were seeing a set of written guidelines or criteria showing how the data sets with the racial data, communities of interest, how those would be ranked and prioritized in a mathematical sense when it comes to the mapping. Has there been any further discussion or plans to set out that guideline in a written format where it's official, citizens will understand how that data is being used and what the priority the commission is placing on that data, how that's going to be laid out?
The Rhode Island Constitution for redistricting does not have like a hierarchy for where something like community of interest will necessarily come play a higher role than the one under it. I mean, we do have our legal guidance with the Voting Rights Act for racial majority districts, equal population. Communities of interest is there, but I'm not prepared to say whether it's number 3 on the list or anything like that. It is an aspect of redistricting that is getting more and more well known. The tools for participating in are getting more and more simpler and accessible, and we simply want to make it as much of a part of the process as we can.
Okay, is there any plan when you're writing an algorithm, you have to have a ranking. So I imagine that there has to be some order and weight that's placed on some of these guidelines. I'm just very curious about how public that type of information is going to be. I know there must be some proprietary information, but that's something that I've been curious about myself.
Okay, I don't know if the word algorithm is correct. I think it's, and we do have, we can't make a district too large to fit in a community of interest, right? Some people have said the town of South Kingstown is a community of interest. Well, it's too large for a census, a state house district. So we're trying to get, but the ones that have very well-defined local geographic communities, they're there to help us not split them up, and if we can, but we can't have like districts, illegal as far as size, too small, too large, but because of them, but we know that they're going to be a great resource for us to do both legally sized districts that don't hurt minorities, and then do keep communities of interest together as much as possible.
I'm just curious for you folks, has there been any discussion? Because I know that this is a very diverse group, and as you've said, you're here to represent these people. So obviously these things matter to you too. You're here to make the rules. I know there's not specific legislation and as far as that ranking goes, as Ryan just said, but have you guys discussed that, how that's going to be laid out, how you'd like to prioritize that? I'm curious if you've put together something like that. I know it has to come up.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has really had any discussions among the commissioners here as to that. We probably have our own thoughts, but bringing them out right now, I'm here at least, is to listen to the people right now, and then we can have a meeting to discuss what we feel.
Yeah,
As Ryan said too, if South Kingston is like a community of interest, and there's 2 House seats in South Kingston, then maybe having such a large amount of community of interest for URI or whatever the reason for South Kingston being the community of interest, it can be split and you have 2 House seats that have the same interest. So would it be just 1, but it would be 2, and they would be that type of a strength for the community of interest.
I just want to let the commission know we will be providing you with all the communities of interest that do get submitted to us. We'll make sure you know exactly what has been brought to our attention. So please know we will, and that'll probably be as soon as you want it. Really, we're hoping to get more. And after every hearing, we do get more submissions. So it's my hope that with the turnout at this hearing, that's going to be even more than we have already. We're looking for robust participation, and we will be bringing it to your attention.
Thanks very much. I'm really glad to hear that you do have plans in place for this transparency. So another question I have is, what kind of time allowance is going to be given for these round two, when the people in the communities have time to look at the maps, the first round of maps, the first draft? What kind of time allowance is going to be given for them to submit their own changes? And kind of to piggyback off of that, is there any kind of, do we have any plans of any type of a follow-up for people, for citizens or communities submitting their own maps? Any follow-up with them, like if I submitted a map, would I just be sending it out into the ether, or would, if you took something from my map and integrated it into the final map, would I ever know? I'm very curious to know about that, because I think it's, if I'm, a lot of people, it's scary to sit down with even with these awesome mapping tools like District R and Representable that make it relatively easy. It's still very time consuming because it's, there's a lot of details that go into that. And for someone to take time out of their life to sit down and do that, it would be great, I think, on at least speaking for myself, to know, oh, we took such and such from yours into account. This is going to end up, does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I don't know if we'd be able to contact the individual people. And most of them are going to be submitting the maps to you, Ryan, and Kim, if I remember correctly.
And we would make all that available to the commission as well.
But do you have the ability to know whose map is being overlaid? Do you have that correspondings for, let's say?
We connect everybody with their submissions. We know that this came from a Rhode Island resident, that is taking an interest in the process.
Like, would I have my email attached, or
No,
do you have any?
I mean.
Oh, so I'm not emailing you a map. I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
you
just
would not
uploading
have you would not have your email attached it's too early to say that. But if there's a report made, I'm not giving away any of your personal information to the public.
Of course not.
Okay.
I just mean, like, if I'm submitting a map on the redistricting website that you folks have set up for us.
Yes, we know it
Is
came
there
from
going to
you.
be a form attached to it, or is there just a drag and drop where I'm just hitting submit and sending it off? Or would I be, I would imagine you would want my name and my address, so you know where I live and you know that I have a vested interest. I live in this community. I'm not just doing this for fun from 6 states away just because I can.
Yeah, that is the sign-up process, yes. And we are definitely deferring all this to Rhode Island residents, way over anyone else from the country. But did you get a copy of the user guide that was at the? Okay, yeah, that's the first page is how to set up an account. That's how we ensure that you are a Rhode Island resident with a vested interest. Yes, and so
you will have that data.
We do.
So potentially you could follow up.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yes.
Okay, I would love to see that.
But I don't know if it's.
Just as a citizen.
Yeah, I don't know if we can say like.
Within reason.
I don't know if I can say this plan here was made. We brought in the League of Women Voters thoughts to it. I don't know if we would announce, but specifically, but we just said we want to say. We brought in all the public submissions that we can, and you would hopefully see that a lot of your
I would love it
ideas.
if you guys got so many submissions that there was just no reasonable way to follow up with every single person. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, Michigan got 1,800 communities
That's
of interest.
incredible. That's incredible, and I hope we see a similar amount here. But if, within reason, I think that would be really valuable, and it would really reassure people that they're not wasting their time, So, all right. Thank you again so much for being here and for all the time you're putting in. I know just like for myself, my own research takes so much time. I can't imagine, sitting in your seat, and you all have jobs and businesses and families. And I don't have kids. I go home to a cat. So if I feel like I'm taking a lot of time, I know you must be just really, really devoting a lot of your time to this. And I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you
So thank
for
you so
your
much.
kind words, Dixie, and thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
And the next gentleman, yes, if you will state your name and any affiliation to any organization.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. I did sign the sign-up sheet. I'm not quite sure why it wasn't called. My name is Doug Victor, and I live in the south side here of
It looked like
Providence.
Jose. I'm sorry, Doug.
Jose?
Yeah, it just looked like a J instead of a D. So
wow.
that's the name I had listed that was still out there.
All right.
Thank you, Doug.
Good.
Sorry about that.
Call me Jose. Me llamo en español, está Monchito. A mis amigos españoles me llaman Monchito. Sí, Monchito, Monchito. Sí. I would like to bring this to a little bit of a more local look, since you're in the south side of Providence. When I heard Mr. Kimbrett, I hope I have your name correct, speak of South Providence, I wasn't quite sure what that area included geographically, because there are several neighborhoods in the south side of Providence. That's kind of a question I have. So the neighborhoods in the south side of Providence are South Providence, are Elmwood, South Elmwood, Reservoir Triangle, and Washington Park. And we're kind of sitting in the West End right now, being on this side, the west side of Broad Street. So in my 36 years of being here, my neighborhood has always been split between two city wards. The South Providence neighborhood has been split between two city wards. I am speaking for myself, but I'm a charter member of the Elmwood Neighborhood Association, and I chair a crime watch for all of Elmwood and South Providence now for 12 years maybe. So I kind of know the neighborhood. And so when I have to, people like me who, like many of us, when issues come up, I have 4 city councilors I need to work with. I have 3 state reps and 2 state senators. And so my comment is one of, what is the impact, as kind of a question, what is the impact of keeping neighborhoods in the south side of Providence, a whole area of the city that has been marginalized in so many ways historically? What is the impact of keeping neighborhoods divided? And I know that your work is primarily targeted toward, the state and the state representative and state senate districts. However, there's going to be, the city council has a ward redistricting committee, I believe it's called, that will kind of follow you, and I believe will take lead from how you come up with what you are presenting for the south side of Providence. I'm making the bid to answer that question. And I believe that having neighborhoods split in half keeps neighborhoods back. It doesn't encourage us building a real robust psychological sense of community. We're one of the most diverse sections of the whole state in the south side. And I won't speak for South Providence neighborhood itself. They can speak very well for themselves. We do have our Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris here, and she has a ward that is kind of, it starts at the water at the Providence River, and it kind of needles out to Route 10, and it kind of makes no sense. I don't want to speak for the councilwoman, but when you look at, when the common person looks at this, it just doesn't make sense. I believe we need to keep neighborhoods together. This process needs to support the integrity of neighborhoods and not splitting, and support neighborhoods like the Elmwood neighborhood, which I will speak to, so that it can be more unified. And I imagine that this process is very, very complex, but I really want the fact that you have the neighborhoods in Providence in mind as you are doing your work on this committee. I think your work is very, very important. Also, I didn't find out about this meeting until this morning. And somebody who is facilitating an organization called Providence Coalition of Neighborhood Associations sent this out to all the neighborhood association chairs, and I'm in that group. And so that's how I heard about it, and it's such a short notice. I mean, so I would ask whoever is in the state with this committee to contact, you could contact me. I would be very happy to put you in touch with the person who is holding all the email informations for all the neighborhood associations in Providence. There are, I believe, 12 of them. A couple of the neighborhoods aren't represented. And I think the time for being split is over. We really need to come together as neighborhoods. We need to be respected as neighborhoods. And I noticed the red dot at the Port of Providence, and I don't know if anybody is aware, but just west of that, there's a band of neighborhoods through Washington Park and South Providence that has the 9th highest asthma rates in the country as a result of the pollution that is generated in that area. So, and many of the people who live there are living at the poverty level or below, are immigrants, maybe don't even speak English. And so I ask also, when you think about resources, there is a dire need in that particular strip of neighborhoods through Washington Park and South Providence that is really suffering. They're really, really, really suffering. This process, as we all know, is so important because your decisions are going to impact how resources are allocated for the next 10 years. And for some kids with severe asthma, that may be their entire lives because their asthma is so bad. So, please keep in mind, thank you for coming to the south side of Providence. Please keep in mind our needs here. And I would be very happy, and I know that other people and other people also in the neighborhood would be very happy to be consulted along the way if that would be to be helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, Doug, Rep. Newberry, but before you do that, I think everything is put on it should be put on the Secretary of State's website about the meeting because this is a public body, so it should be all up on the Secretary of State's website. Rep. Newberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to try to address a few of the points. I don't live in Providence. I'm certainly not an expert on the neighborhoods on the south side of Providence. I did live in Providence at one time. I think a couple of things you have to bear in mind, because I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, but a couple of things to remember. First of all, we don't set the council boundaries for the city of Providence. So
Understood.
Okay. Secondly, the districts in Rhode Island, the House and Senate districts, are relatively small population-wise. If the neighborhoods you're talking about are large, they're inevitably going to be split up in some fashion. If you look around the state, you'll find a lot of anomalies. My town has 12,000 people, and we have 3 different Senate districts in my town. There are historical reasons for that, but it doesn't make sense objectively looking at it. And you may be looking at a similar situation in your area, that there may be an historical reason for that. But the other thing to remember, and Ryan, you may be able to speak more to this, the law requires the creation of majority-minority districts. And I imagine a lot of city neighborhoods are mixed race, so they're neighborhoods in the neighborhood sense, but they're mixed race. For example, where I used to live in Providence, I used to live right off Camp Street on the east side. That's right exactly in the district that former Rep. Almeida was talking about, that Senator Metz represents now. That stretch of the east side, it doesn't look normal on a map, but it's in there so that Senate 6 is a majority-minority district. Otherwise, the rest of that neighborhood really belongs in, I think it's Senate 3, from a geographic neighborhood perspective. When I lived off Camp Street, I lived in the Mount Hope section. To me, the Mount Hope section was, Hope Street. It was the northern part of the east side of Providence, but senatorially it's not because of other factors. So I agree with you. The situation you may be looking at now may look unusual to you, and I don't know the specifics of what it is, but there are often reasons for it that may not, that may make sense if you can sit down and get it explained to you in detail, which I can't do, but I just want you to bear that in mind. I would welcome you to speak to, Ryan or anyone else offline, and you can maybe get a better explanation. And again, any member of the public can meet with him or send in concerns or anything like that. Okay?
Thank you for that. I'm kind of a man on the street, and I hear a lot of what people talk about, and they talk about division, and they talk about separation. And, these neighborhoods in the South Side are, again, some of the most diverse neighborhoods in the state, and this process cannot serve to marginalize the neighborhoods or people living in the neighborhoods who've historically been marginalized. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, for speaking.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Rep. Diaz?
Monchito, can you back to the microphone, please?
See.
I know Monchito for many, many years. He's a great advocate for the neighborhood. I just want to tell you that the great opportunity we have to keep some neighborhood area is by thinking about community interests. And for example, Washington Park is divided by Broad Street and it's split in two areas, two districts, because it's so large to be put in one district. But inside the Washington Park neighborhood, also we have few community interests. The one you just mentioned about the asthma and pollution, the distinct aspect of the side in one is in Broad Street, and the other one near to Narragansett and this area around the water. So they are distinct in so many categories, and we taking in consideration those aspects based on the community interest. So your points are very well received from us, but at the same time, part of the main thing for us is to keep community interests together, compact. And one district can have as many community interests as needed. So there is where your idea is well taken and can be applied the way you express it. Okay?
Sí, thank you.
Thank you, Monchito.
Gracias.
Thank you, Rep. Diaz. Thank you, Doug, again. Appreciate it. I don't think there's anybody else. I will ask one last, sir, yes. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's Mr. Buchanan. If you want to come down and speak, be our guest. And are you speaking for yourself, or are you speaking for the Action Committee?
My name is Mr. Joseph P. Buchanan. I'm a 69-year-old black man. I lived in the South Providence area my whole life. Now I live up here in the West End, on Linwood Avenue. I'm here representing the Fund for the Black Political Progress, and I'm also here for the Black Political Action Committee. And I'm actually here to speak for my black folks in my neighborhood. I don't use the word minority because minority means less than. And we're not less than anybody. That includes my sisters up here on the stage. So when you use that word minority, to me, all it does is piss me off. Because we got to stop using that word minority because we're not less than anybody. I was sent here to find out what is going on as far as this redistricting is concerned. I want to make sure that my black people are being heard. And when I say black folks, we have black Hispanic. We have black Indian. So don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm talking about just myself and my black people. I'm talking about all black people. I want this to be known that we are here. We are not going to go away. And if this panel thinks they're going to do anything to shorten the lives of our black community and our legislators, you are sadly mistaken. I will not, and my people will not sit back and allow this to happen. So I hope that you guys are thinking clearly to make sure that blacks are in positions of power and do not dwindle away like I've been seeing. I've been living in the city of Providence my whole life. I'm 69, I'll be 70 next year. And I plan on reading a lot of hell, and I hope the young folks do too. Thank you, God bless you, and I'm out. If you have any questions, speak.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Any comments or questions for Mr. Buchanan? Seeing none, thank you very much for your advocacy.
Thank you, and God bless all of you, because you got a hard job to do.
God bless you, Joe.
Okay, and I see Representative Batista just left. He had signed up, but he didn't say if he was going to speak, written, or anything else, but I already acknowledged Representative Batista before. And there's a Gonzalo Suevo Gonzalez. Okay. He was here, he's not here? Okay. I just want to acknowledge that he had signed up, but he also didn't put down whether he was supplying written testimony or verbal testimony or anything else. Last call. Anybody else that would like to speak? I don't see any. Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. Councilwoman, I just heard that your Councilwoman Mary Harris, is it?
Mary Kay.
Mary Kay.
Yes, and thank you for this panel. I think the reason I wanted to just give a little weigh in on it is because I and my colleague just left out the door, which is she's not, I'm a city council, but she's not, she's part of the public, and she is also helping us with the redistricting from the city perspective. And I want to say it's really important that we pay attention to the public and what people have to say, especially as they come around to the city making decisions. Like my constituent said, Doug, who's very, very active in the community, talk a lot to a lot of people. People are really concerned. What happened was 10, 12 years ago with the redistricting, people felt like their voices wasn't heard. So in South Providence, as folks can remember, it was very, very ugly. Because at the end, what happened was things were brought to people, especially with the redistricting and the drawing of the lines, without people input. So what has happened through all of that, it has made it really difficult for me as a council person to serve in many of these areas, simply because I'm mistaken sometimes who's my constituent, who's not. I don't always go to the diagram and say, oh, is this my constituent or not? So it's not so much me being confused as my constituents who need the service. So what happens is I find myself spending a lot of time with some other council person's resident instead of someone from mine. I'm gonna use an example. I have one side of the street belonging to another council person, and I'm on the other side. And Doug have explained it from the east to the west, how broad that is. And the neighborhood is not it's not consistent. It's not structured in a way where people feel like they are getting a representation. They are, but you know what I mean? It doesn't seem that way. It seems like it's just too divided. So it's exciting to see you tonight. Thank you for putting this forum on. I really was interested. I'm here because I'm really interested in what the public has to say as we start to move towards drawing the lines or redistricting here in the city. We want to make sure that we do not so much as piggyback off what you do, but make sure that we are addressing the needs of the people and thinking about some of these things beforehand, because you guys didn't get a prior group of people who are coming in saying do this and do that. But I have the opportunity, so thank you again for tonight. And thank you guys for all the work you do. Thank you. As a public servant myself, I know it's a lot that we have to do and think about. So thank you. And I want to thank you for my constituents that came out tonight as well.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yes, Senator Quesada.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take the opportunity to thank each of one of you for being here tonight. It's really I feel so happy to see so many people show up tonight to participate in this meeting, and that I didn't see in all the meetings that we had so far. This is being one of the biggest meetings we had since we started this committee. Then I want to really say thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to, for us to take, to give us the opportunity to listen to your thought and your ideas. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else, any comments? No, okay. Yes, Senator Metz.
Yeah, if I can, I said at the earlier meetings, through this committee process, I would like the prison gerrymandering addressed in some form by this commission, because the folks of the people that I live around, we don't want to hear that it has to go another 10 years before we do anything. So I think we do need to look at it during this process, because it keeps coming up, and then then we kind of put the lid on it. But this is very, very important to our constituents over here in this side, and well, throughout the state.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Anybody? No one else? It seems like okay. So that'll end the public section of this meeting. Our next meeting will be Thursday night at CCRI Warwick Campus at 6 p.m. And then, with that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So move. Second. We are adjourned.